So look, this is all about kind of user-centric design, empathy we've been talking about already here at this conference. I can't help but think I'm a terrible user. I bark at my digital assistants, right? In the morning, I ask them what temperature, and they don't understand me, and blah, 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 blah. My autocomplete on my laptop never understands me. I'm just a terrible human, and yet I sometimes ask, is it the tech's fault, or is it me? Am I not doing things right? So I'm really interested to figure out what you're doing to accommodate your very, very, very human and flawed users. So first off, Marisol, why don't you walk me through what SAP is doing in this realm?
Well, let me just ask the question. How many of you here know SAP or is using SAP? Oh, there's some. That's wonderful. So you know that we have a very big portfolio of products, and most of which have been developed before the iPhone. So they're monolithic, and one of the participants actually told me it was very difficult to build on top of SAP applications because the application logic and the UI are tightly coupled. So it's very difficult for us to renew our user experience. And we also acquired many cloud products. And each one of those come with different user experiences. So how do we build this all so that they are consistent and modern? Because that's what our customers want. So we then look at a more innovative way of solving the problem. And we did it it's some sort of a VC type concept within the company. And we came up with two solutions. One is Copilot, which is the digital assistant of the enterprise, similar to Alexa. And the other one is SAP Inscribe. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we love this new ways of interacting with machines is it solves our business problems. One of those is integration. Because if you're using Copilot, for example, you don't have to move from one system to the other to do what you want or to execute on your activities.
So one of your biggest problems is integration.
Yes.
That's what you're trying to solve.
That's one of the problems. The second one, of course, is we know that how we work is not supported by how our enterprise systems are built. We want this to be intent-driven, and that's what these new ways of interacting with systems is. And then the last one, of course, is for me the more, I would say, the purpose that designers can probably, I would say, identify with, and that's, these types of interaction actually make us more human.
Right.
And it allows us to be more human because then we use the ways that we interact with each other, with our environment. Now that the machines are more intelligent, then we can use that to interact with the machines.
Well, let me ask our audience an unfair question to you, Marisol. How many people feel human when they use business software? Raise your hand. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Oh, come on.
All right, so there's a lot of work to do,
Yes.
right? It's not exactly a sexy topic. All right, Miriam, why don't you tell me? I think we're all familiar with the Echo device, but I don't think we're as familiar with all the things that you're doing. So why don't you start us from the beginning?
Okay, I have to start by saying we at Amazon had the luxury of starting from a fairly clean slate, unlike what Marisol just said. We were not trying to retrofit on top of an existing technology. But strangely enough, voice is something that we were all very familiar with, right? It's something you learn from childhood, from childbirth, actually. But when we started designing a voice interaction system, we did our best, I should say, to design for humans. Right? We have something like that. We say, are you designing for humans?
What does that mean? Because we're certainly not trying to design for robots most of the time, right?
Yeah, we probably didn't have you in mind.
Right, no, I'm terrible, we've established.
But we tried to think about what does it mean to design for humans in terms of voice interaction. The technologies we had available to us, which is automatic speech recognition, natural language understanding, they'd come along a long way, but not far enough, right? So when we started 4.5 years ago, it was still, if you think about Alexa's voice at that time, it was very machine-like. It wasn't actually that much of human-like, right? We've come a long way even from 4 years to now, where it sounds a little bit more human. But so when we started, we had to think about what are the simplest things you can have humans do with a voice and an assistant sitting in a speaker? What would make them comfortable? And we had to design for things like that. And we started from even that LED ring that you see on the device. It conveys that Alexa's thinking or listening or speaking. Not that we, said that to humans, but subconsciously, humans, when they talk to this device, were looking at it, and that LED was kind of a, confirmation that there was somebody at the other end who was going to think and respond to your question, right? So we had to start from the very basics, right? Then we had to go into how would people want to talk to an assistant? Right? What utterances would they use? And it wasn't possible to imagine every utterance. And this is one of the reasons we started off by just doing an invite-only launch, so we can learn from those customers. Right? And customers kept giving us feedback saying, she didn't hear me right, she didn't give me the right answer. Right. And every time we get feedback about that friction, we would improve it. We'd run models and algorithms to improve it.
And Scottish customers just gave you a string of expletives, right?
Totally.
Right, okay.
We had to build a profanity filter for that.
I imagine, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's all about taking this data, learning from it, figuring out what they're doing. What are you learning at SAP with that? I'm intrigued by you collect so much data, it's core of your business, and yet you've got this thing called Inscribe.
Yes.
That you write, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so let me just put it in context. We look at SAP Inscribe as a conversational user experience as well. Especially in the business context, you just don't use your voice to communicate. You send a lot of emails. You draw or illustrate to prove your point or to convey your point. And there are several situations where voice just doesn't cut it, or typing on your screen or your phone seems rude, right? If you're in a meeting, don't you feel offended when someone just taps away on their phone or their Mac?
Well, I hesitate to even think what a meeting would be like if we had to use voice commands to get anything done. It's just people yelling at each other.
Actually, that happened in one. You mentioned that you were at Sapphire one time, or you covered Sapphire. In one of our events there was actually a guest, or one of the guests was talking to his digital assistant while someone else is making a presentation. So it does happen. But in meetings, right? So somehow it's an accepted social convention that we use pen and paper. Now it's also okay. We seem to be okay if someone uses a stylus and tablet, and that's exactly what Inscribe is all about. We're mimicking the pen and paper paradigm, looking at how can we enhance that with technology, and then so we bring you access to the SAP system and other systems like, for example, if you're in a meeting and you want to know something about whatever it is in the internet, you can also get that. So one of our customers, he's a sales guy, and he said, whenever I have a meeting with customers, it looks like I'm so attentive, and it looks like I know all the answers, because then with SAP Inscribe, I get that from the system. Yeah.
So I'm fascinated by this whole concept, where humans meet technology. And I'm also fascinated because we're both adaptable, right? The tech adapts. We see that every day. Humans adapt, highly adaptable species. So how much of the adaptation are you trying to engineer into your products to accommodate a human? And different kinds of humans, right? We're talking about global products here, versus making humans change their behavior. In the early days of voice assistants, people would change the way they asked questions, right? You'd ask the question 2 and 3 times to figure out which one was the right one. And I'm almost horrified to imagine what I would do with a writing-based thing, because, of course, my handwriting has devolved into such chicken scratch, that typing has eliminated my ability to even write, really, beyond my signature. So how do you accommodate that? Do I need to go back and learn how to write again?
No, if we can show, the product, actually.
Sure,
I think
sure.
We have a
Let's see if we
video
can, I think we have a video here.
So you don't necessarily have to write. You just have to maybe squiggle, cross things out. And so it's a very natural way for you to interact with your product, as you can see here. And it does us identify or recognize the chicken scratch. So what we use here is really just conversational UI technologies as well, natural language processing and machine learning, but it's just a different way of interacting for those situations where you cannot talk.
Yeah, yeah, fascinating. And how about you? What's the deal with voice? How do we know? Should we change the way we ask questions?
Actually, humans have been changing the way they ask questions. So
right.
There is a little bit of both. I don't think there's one clean answer. When we started, we saw a lot of utterances that were creating friction because Alexa was always saying, I don't know that.
Right.
Right? So, but we saw what question was asked, anonymously, of course, and we were like, okay, the next time that person asked the question, we should give them the right answer.
Right.
Right? So we were seeing how people were asking questions and quick turn adaptation to answer to those utterances. So humans were teaching us how to write the algorithms for an assistant, but it goes the other way too. We sometimes teach humans too. Like if sometimes they ask a question that's not very clear, we went from single turn interaction to multi-turn interaction. So Alexa would then say, you mean this, right? And if they confirm, then you know you're on the right path. So now, we were adapting, at first we didn't have multi-turn interaction. Then we introduced multi-turn interactions, right? But we also found other things. It wasn't just about how they interact, it's what they wanted to do when they interacted, right? Like in some cases, we found that, let's say they wanted to turn off lights, Sure. In the beginning, we actually said, okay, turning off your light. And we got a lot of emails saying, that's annoying. Right? So we changed it. We just made it a little beep. At least you get an auditory confirmation that lights were going off. You can obviously see it too, but they told us they don't want a human-like voice responding to simple things like that. But in other cases, we were completely surprised. People were discussing emotions with the virtual assistant, and we had not planned for that. We had to put together, they were asking Alexa for opinions. What do you think about this?
So they were lying down on the couch and being like, well, Doc.
Yeah. It would just be, oh, Alexa, I had a really tough day today. That's just expressing your emotion. Or they'd be, what's your favorite color?
Sure.
So we realized we needed to give Alexa a little bit of personality and attitude to answer those questions. So we actually had to form a personality team that would...
Personality team.
A personality team.
There's a team that focuses on personality.
Yes.
This is amazing.
And that was a key learning for us. So we formed a personality team with a diverse group of individuals. There were designers, editors, scientists from all walks of life because personality is diverse, right?
Sure.
And we had to give Alexa some opinions. We had to, help her learn how to deal with emotions. So, we learned as we went and adapted the virtual assistant as well. But in lots of other ways, the customers learned from how Alexa was responding, and they changed how they interacted as well.
Yeah, yeah. What are we learning about people, how people are working in the office, right? So you've created a product that involves writing. It's discreet. It doesn't annoy. I mean, really, it's all about annoyance aversion, right? What are people doing? You're learning a lot about how we work.
Yes, and we interviewed a lot of our customers and our users, and one of the biggest concerns, of course, is how is this digital assistant going to evolve, right? So, in fact, we don't even call it the digital assistant, we call it a coworker.
A coworker?
Yes, and because this digital assistant must have some expertise of the system, and how do we make it so it doesn't compete with you? Because unlike a coworker who you train and then one day might be, your boss, this digital assistant or this coworker would never ever be better than you, and that is what we're trying to make sure that the workers are not afraid to use the assistant, because if they don't use it, then it doesn't learn and it doesn't help them.
Well, I for one welcome our robot overlords, so that's fine. Well, that's really interesting. I mean, but again, in terms of mode of interaction, are there moments when speaking are you looking into a voice-based interaction? Are you looking into, obviously touch is well developed out there. Are there other modes that you're learning? People in offices need this.
Yes, we are exploring a lot of different ways of interacting with the system. We're leaning towards more the natural or intuitive ways of doing it. Just to share with you some of the things that we're exploring, we're looking at eye tracking, brain-computer interface. Actually, personally, I believe that brain-computer interface together with machine learning will be the next wave for enterprise systems. Reason for that is we talk a lot about AI, and of course AI, we say, will automate some of the jobs, and of course we're going to do the creative jobs. We keep saying this, but that means we're going to have to constantly learn new skills. That's great for us. It brings us a lot of opportunities, but also it brings a lot of stress. And with brain-computer interface and machine learning, you can imagine us delivering enterprise systems, learning systems that would then anticipate or know how you want to learn and deliver learning modules to you in the safety of your workspace and identify when is the peak time for you to learn and deliver that while you're learning. Working, I should say. One of the things that our customers love a lot is, and they like this use case, is when you're in a manufacturing floor. So what if you have a manufacturing execution system that will warn you based on neuroscience and machine learning that, hey, you're losing focus or attention, so maybe take a break instead of make a mistake or worse, put yourself in danger. So all of these things, I see this as technologies that will allow us to adapt the user experience or the UI based on your focus, your concentration, and maybe even change your workflow based on that.
Your company plugging directly into your brain. I suppose that is the next step of interaction design. I'd love to come to the audience for questions. Who has a question for my panelists? Well, I've got one, which is very simply, and it's for you, Miriam. You know, Amazon's looking at a bunch of different kinds of Echo devices. You've got the Show, which has a screen, and you've got Auto now. I'm intrigued by Auto because I've, in my capacity as an editor at Fortune magazine, I have really spoken to a lot of automakers, and they're very sensitive to what they will and won't allow inside a moving vehicle, right? Safety comes first. And so what are you learning about that? Because you want to have what I presume is a voice-based device,
totally.
And yet the brain is distracted.
Now, if you think about what form factor we first introduced, it was a speaker. And there was a reason we chose that form factor first, because there isn't anybody that doesn't like music of some genre, some kind of music, right? So it was a popular use case to start with. But that came, even though it's a popular use case, it came with some challenges in that there's only so much you can process by ear, right? Sometimes it's auditory overload. What's on my shopping list? Long list. You don't want to overload that, right? So we had to come up with crisp, audio responses. Then we went to Show, which was, we realized the limitations of just having a vocal interaction. Mm-hmm. It was necessary to complement voice interaction with some visuals.
Which is very difficult.
Right?
I ordered a house cleaning product or something on my very conventional Echo, and I kind of wanted to see it, What was I looking at?
Right, exactly. And sometimes you're looking for information, and it's too much to just process, and it's nice to actually see something as well, even though you started with voice. You started with a voice interaction. So that was like the next generation or the leap in design and interaction that we had to make. Now we're thinking about, okay, now you're outside the home, and you're in your car. People spend somewhere between 30 minutes to 60 minutes in a car, every day. And there is no better place for voice than in the car, if you think about it, even though we started with a speaker form factor, because in the car, you want your eyes on the road, your hands on the wheel. You don't want to be meddling with anything else. So voice is a great interaction model for the car. However, we had to make sure it worked well. Right? Because there's lots of noise in the car, and your assistant.
Defining what is working well, right? Defining your baseline.
Totally. First of all, the bar was higher because road noise, air conditioning, people speaking in a closed setting, radio playing. The assistant had to hear you on top of all of that and hear you accurately, right? Then giving you a response, and the response cannot be, go look at your app. Right? The response has to be a safe response. So you talked about safety and regulation. So we worked with a lot of industry experts to make sure that we tuned the voice responses. We tuned the LED patterns that show up to make sure it was not distracting. Right?
Yeah.
So we had to go through a lot of redesign of the voice interaction and the LED interaction to make sure it's safe for the road.
But you're doing a lot of that once the product is launched, or how much of that happened before the product?
A lot of that has actually happened before.
Before,
Right. As we went through our design process, then we do a wide beta where actual customers tell us, and we do distraction studies as well. And then we got some industry experts to test and tell us how much it was, meeting their requirements. So we're doing a lot of that as we're rolling it out.
Marisol, how much of I'm fascinated by the line between how much you do before launch and how much you learn post-launch. There's obviously the long-standing beta culture in Silicon Valley. How much did you want to get done in the design process before the launch of these products?
We always work with customers from the ideation phase. We actually listen to them, where the technology makes more sense to their business, where the technology can bring value to their business. So as far as use cases are concerned, that's completely defined by customers.
Right.
We show them the possibility of the technology, and they help us define what are the use cases for the technology. And after we have a viable product that can go on beta, then we have at least 6 months of beta with at least 5 to 10 customers.
Right.
And then we open it up to partners, because SAP is big on the ecosystem play, so that we open it up to partners, and once we're ready, then we do a release.
I was going to say, at what point do you just deploy it to the entire customer base?
When we have something that brings value to all of the customers, and that's exactly the point. I mean, because sometimes you get so excited about technology, and then everyone scratches their head, how do I use it? What is it about, right?
Right. Well, I can envision a lot of head scratching, but obviously a lot less with you two working on this. This has been fascinating. Thank you so much. Please, a round of applause
Thank you for having us.
Miriam and Marisol. Thank you.